What if the most powerful weapon in the universe was already on Earth? Welcome back to Gimme 5 Review, Books and Authors, where we dive into powerful stories, bold ideas, and the minds behind them. Today, I'm excited to welcome back author Paul Vecchiet. Paul was born in Trieste, Italy, and moved to the United States at a young age, growing up in the Chicago suburbs. Currently, Paul is an architect with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. He lives in rural West Virginia with his wife, Janice, their two rescue dogs, Wolgie and Leah, under a sky full of stars that feels straight out of one of his books. I had the pleasure of speaking with Paul last year about his first novel, The Disclosure Paradox, a story that blended extraterrestrial mystery with thought-provoking ideas about humanity. And today, we go even deeper. We're diving into the sequel, The Disclosure Paradox: Salvation, where the stakes are higher, the questions are bigger, and the most powerful weapon in the universe may not be what we expect. It's something hidden in the Turin, Italy, the Holy Shroud. Yeah, we're going there. So let's jump in. Thanks for joining me. All right, let's welcome in Paul. All right, Paul, so are you ready to jump in? Get started on your second book, the sequel to The Disclosure Paradox, the first one we talked about back in June of last year.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let me ask you this. One of the most fascinating ideas in your book is the hypothesis about the DNA in the blood of Jesus. Can you explain the concept to our listeners?
Sure. And again, it links to a hypothesis in the first book where I state that is it possible that original sin is actually biological and that is related to our DNA, and our DNA is actually our original sin, which makes us, barbaric, violent, and all of those bad things. So the hypothesis is because there is a quote in the Bible that states that Jesus's blood will wash away the sins of the earth. What if it was taken literally? And what if the DNA of Jesus would actually be able to repair our own DNA to be like him and then remove our original sin?
Oh, I really like that a lot. So when we're hooking this back to your first book, The Disclosure Paradox, how is this building upon that first book?
Yeah. So we learn in the first book that a malevolent group of extraterrestrials abducted us because they were testing us. They were testing our blood, and they were checking out, our genetics, and they were testing out our physical weaknesses and things like that. And the flip side is that it was a joint base between these malevolent extraterrestrials and humans that were part of not a military group, but that they were involved with the military-industrial complex. They were mercenaries. So they would enter into an agreement with these beings that the beings could investigate our DNA and our blood as long as they were able to make super soldiers as part of the experiment. Okay, so that's what happens in the first book. And what I add in the second book, and well, let me go back to the first book. The first book, they go into this underground lab. They rescue humans. One of the humans is actually the son of one of the rescuers. When they get rescued, they get abducted back by the good aliens, and they get repaired. Well, in book 2, the son gets returned. And the son gets returned, and he has all of this knowledge from when he was abducted, when he was in those those sacks when they were testing him. He has all of that knowledge in the back of his head, but it's suppressed, just like some of the things that the abductees had, that they make sure that it's not in our memory, that it is part of our subconscious where we only would dream of it. So when they go to, and this is in book 2, when they go to a psychiatrist, she puts him under regressive therapy, and there he reveals the plot of these malevolent beings, that they are testing humans and human DNA to isolate the gene that gives us love.
You know what? We could use some of that, Paul, for sure. I would be A-okay with that, tap into that genetic code, please. And Paul, it's really interesting because you have roots back to Italy, and your story opens with a murder that's tied to the Vatican.
Correct.
So what drew you to combine a thriller with spiritual and extraterrestrial themes? Was it?
Right. So the important thing about that murder is that it grounds the story into reality, and it links, it's a reason for Robert Ladd, who was in the first novel. He decides that something is up where his friend disappears, and he has bad feeling about it, and he goes to Rome and seeks help with Rome Interpol to find out what happened to his friend who got murdered. So we know who murders him. We just don't know why. So it's not a who done it, it's a why done it.
A why done it. Exactly. Fascinating. So your work blends science, spirituality, the extraterrestrial phenomenon, and how these 3 areas are connected, right? I'm kind of seeing how they're coming together now. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Right. So the extraterrestrials failed to isolate the, we learn in the second book from the regressive therapy that the extraterrestrials failed to, in their mission to isolate the gene in our DNA, because they encountered a biological lock. So they come up with an alternate plan. They know about the shroud, and they know that the shroud has the DNA of Jesus, and they figured that that would be what they would need, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to isolate this gene that gives us love, because they don't know what love is. And what love is used by the extraterrestrials is a feeling of, and a greeting. So when they don't communicate, like we do with radio and stuff like that, they communicate telepathically. And so when there is a ship and they see a ship, they throw out a thought of love. And if they get back another response of love, they know it's a friendly. If they don't get a response, they know it's suspect. So these aliens, these malevolent ones, they want to weaponize love. They want to actually synthesize it so they can use it as a weapon to fool the benevolent ones.
Oh, that's very deceptive. So what would you say to our readers who are skeptical of linking extraterrestrial intelligence with the human spirituality?
There's so much to think about. It's okay to be skeptical either way. What I offer is thoughts that can open up another world to them. And when they read things in the Bible, they will read the words differently if they listen to what I'm trying to say, trying to tell them. There are over 370 verses in the Bible that mention the blood of Christ. That's not an accident. I think that was actually intended for us to, for them to tell us that there's something special about the blood. We either it's been suppressed or we're just ignorant to it, but there's something there. And I feel, and well, first of all, the fact is that they've tested the blood and it's not entirely human. So that's one thing. And the other
Seriously?
thing, yeah, and the other
Really?
thing is that they've identified that there's something different in the DNA too. So because that opens up an entire new paradigm to the Catholics, there's a restriction on doing any more testing on the shroud.
That's fascinating. So that's why the Shroud of Turin is so central to your story. There's a lot more than meets the eye in reality and fiction, right?
Correct.
Wow,
Well,
that's fascinating.
there's an entire chapter that I devote to explaining all of the aspects of the shroud through various disciplines that authenticates it, from archaeology to art history, forensics, blood science, even botany, and geology. All of that is based on papers that I was given by the man who has written the foreword for my novel, which is Joe Marino. He's a former Benedictine monk that has been researching the shroud for over 40 years. And he friended me after reading the first book. And I had no intention of writing the second book. But he said, what's missing in this first book is the shroud. And from then on, he sent me over 100 documents, research papers from all over the world. And I started reading it. I thought, wow, this actually could make for a good novel. So I sent him an outline. He liked it. And then when I put together a manuscript only 6 months after I wrote the outline, he loved it. And he agreed to write the foreword for novels on the assumption that I would have an entire chapter on just facts, not fiction, everything in that chapter, that I fictionalize the scientists that are involved. So I don't use their real names, but they are involved in a conversation at a table with two of the characters, and they explain one by one, based on their discipline, why the shroud is authentic.
Wow, that's fascinating, because it is grounding, like you said, fiction with nonfiction, and it's a way to present it. So would you say that you see your book as purely fiction or as a way to explore deeper possibilities? It seems like deeper possibilities and the origins. I mean, you must have shelves and shelves and shelves of books and papers that you had to digest as you were creating this book, right? Yeah, look at that.
So I don't present an alternative dogma. I extend the existing dogma.
Perfect.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I use a lot of what is already accepted in Catholicism and Christianity, and then I present another angle. Careful not to fight what is existing, extrapolate on it, perhaps, add something to it that is deeper than what they believe in.
Which naturally, by human nature, people are going to want to resist and try to, be, as we said, the skepticals of this knowledge. So I like that. And let's talk a little bit about the conflicts and the stakes. So there are forces trying to weaponize this DNA in the shroud.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As love. Imagine that. Love as a weapon. That's never been done before in real life. So what does that represent in the broader spect? You had said that they would use that as a way to gauge whether they were communicating with friendly forces or,
right,
potential enemies, right?
So the implications are, grand as far as, world building, because if they were to synthesize the DNA and or synthesize the DNA and isolate that gene that gives us love, and that's what people need to understand is it is something unique and powerful, and it's not just like feelings or something. It goes beyond that. So so I present that, and the if they have that ability, it would change the balance of power in the universe, because they can essentially ambush benevolent forces and really overpower them.
Wow, and I think it's fascinating too that you introduced the idea of some non-human intelligences, they may not understand love, that
Right.
maybe only here on this earth the humans are the ones with all the emotions, right? So can you talk a little bit more why you wanted to introduce that concept about why this matters in your novel?
Well, a lot of my novels have to do about our consciousness. Every one of my books has something involving meditation and thought as power. And there is a science called noetics, which is the science of the power of thought. And so people need to understand that when we are thinking, and when there are people in mass numbers thinking about the same thing or meditating on the same thing, it actually can make things happen.
And I remember, Paul, when we were talking in the first book about the experience that you had, that it was a meditative experience, right? And when you were originally able to communicate with the extraterrestrials. So during in your own personal practice, on your own personal note, because you're a very busy architect, do you spend hours a day connecting with this consciousness, or do you have a dedicated?
I think if it happens, it happens. If it's supposed to happen, it happens. Every one of those meditations that I've had, I had no intention of whatever happened. It just occurred to me. And lately there has been some things that have been going on. You don't know this, but recently I had a meditation, and there were flashes of equations that I didn't recognize, but it was in rapid succession, and I recognized them as, equations related to physics, really complex equations, but I couldn't isolate them. I couldn't remember them. And I feel that it was maybe something downloading in me from somewhere. But the interesting thing is that I am using that in my fourth book.
Fourth book. You're brilliant. Where I feel so like such a slouch, It's like, okay, why aren't I writing more? Wow. And so these equations, it's so unfortunate that we forget 90 seconds after awaking our dream state that you weren't able to record these. And from my studies, I have learned that the extraterrestrials do come in during warlike times to kind of prevent us from hurting ourselves, right? Do you feel maybe that's why now you're starting to get these downloads? And
I can't explain it. All I could say is what is happening and acknowledge it, but it's not something linear, and it may be something that I may not need until years from now. Who knows? But it happened. I know it's unique, and I feel that it's something special. I'll cherish it, but I have no idea why.
Well, probably you're going to be sent the other puzzle pieces soon. So that's exciting to know that, you know, when you go into your meditation or into your dream state, that there's these communications that might be starting coming through more and more for book number 4. That's amazing. So thinking about the book, the antagonist in this book has
Yes.
deeply personal motivation tied
Yes.
to the trauma. So why is this important for you to include this?
I make sure that every one of my books has some sort of social voice. Okay. The first book had the diversity of our society. You know, I had an autistic woman, I had a black gay woman. You know, I brought out the issue of sexual abuse, and um, so that was, you know, brought up in this one, because we're talking about the Catholic Church. I had to come up with a reason that he has so much pent up revenge against the church. And it just made sense to make him a victim of abuse when he was a child.
Right, and that's your main character, Robert Ladd. So
No,
no,
no, that's the antagonist, you mean, right?
I'm sorry,
That's
the antagonist. Sorry,
yeah.
getting
The,
my characters mixed up. So
Robert
your
Ladd
main
is,
character, Robert, then,
yeah.
he's undergoing physical and spiritual trials as well as the antagonist. So that
Well,
journey
Robert
is
is a recovered alcoholic. He's got PTSD, and it still affects him from having 2 tours each in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I detail that in my first book. So it impacts him in this book. Yep.
and you know, it's really interesting that you have touched on so many emotional elements that a lot of the population can identify with, right? So there's
Yeah.
very strong psychic and spiritual elements in your characters. How did you develop these abilities in a believable way?
It's a development from, you know, book one. Book one could be an autobiography. So everything in there spiritually is deeply ingrained in me from the time that I was a child thinking about spirituality to now. And I just developed those thoughts and hypotheses in the first book. It was really easy to do. We have the same characters. We have Mary Ellen, Katrina, and Robert. We know that we're fighting a malevolent force that is demonic in nature. So because of that, the spirituality thing is really, you know, stronger. And there is a passage in the book that one of the characters, the chief of Interpol, um, Gennaro Angadi, close to the climax, he is attacked by one of the demons. And what happens is that the demon tries to separate his spirit from his body. And so it causes him to go unconscious. And Mary Ellen is able to identify this and connects with Robert telepathically so that Robert can use his body. She works through him, and he's able to place his hand on Angadi and relink his spirit to his body. So that is something that I came up with that's not in the first book, but makes a lot of sense. And then, you know, after that, Angadi wakes up and he says, "So the devil can take your soul."
You know, this is really going to challenge a lot of the religious community and the science community, right? So how do you think this could change humanity's understanding of religion and science?
I try and bridge the gap between religion and science. Um, I I try and respect some of the mythologies, um, but still using science to explain miracles, for example. In the chapter where we talk about the shroud and the image of Jesus on the linen, it is explained through science. People recognize it as a miracle that the image appeared on the linen, but there's a scientific explanation for that. It was a radiological event. When he rose from the dead, that's a very simple simplification, though. I don't think it was actually rising from the dead. But anyway, when that happened, it caused his body to emit radiation on the linen, making the imprint of his image on this linen, not destroying the linen, not burning it up, just making the image. And that's one thing that I learned in the research, when we're trying to figure out, well, how did this thing really happen? And then, people that are not very well versed about all of this, these building blocks of knowledge behind the shroud, think of it as a miracle. When I was invited to the Shroud Symposium in Seattle in September, and there was a roundtable discussion, and I kind of made people uneasy when I said that what happened to Jesus was originally meant to be a miracle, and now we're finding that there's a science behind it. And I said, I think eventually we're going to find out that all these miracles, that there's a scientific explanation for it. And there were some people that would say, oh no, I believe in miracles. I don't believe in miracles. I believe that there is an explanation for everything.
So more scientific founding. So do you think that humanity is ready for this kind of revelation based on the responses you were getting at the symposium? Do you think they're ready for it?
I'd say a majority is, yeah. But it's funny, again, I'm in the first book, I was getting pushback more from atheists than I was getting from religious people, because there was so much spirituality in the book, and atheists just don't believe at all that anything happens to us when we pass. We're here, and then we just turn to dust. But that's not the case.
Right. It's definitely going to challenge a lot of people's belief systems, which is a good thing. I mean, people get so complacent and they're in the little boxes. They need to be challenged to think outside that box. And definitely your books challenge a lot of people to think outside the box. Thank goodness. And
absolutely.
As you said in book one, it was kind of like an autobiography in a way. So some of these elements of your books are very personal. Are there any specific things that draw from your own life in this book?
I'm trying to think. I think everything in this book is pretty much separate from my life. In fact, the main character from the first book, Lewis, he's not in the second book. So it's really just an explanation that develops the thought about our DNA, linking it with the blood and the DNA of Christ. But there's nothing in there that is related to my life or my past life. I do put in there things, though, that I have a strong belief in. For example, I have Chief Ngati convincing Robert and Katrina to attend the Stations of the Cross at the Colosseum. And at the Stations of the Cross, I explain what is happening at every station. And one by one, the issues are, the social issues are brought up: diversity, immigration, disabilities, equality. All of that is brought up as the Pope is presiding over the Stations of the Cross, and with every Station of the Cross, they explain how that station relates to this family, for example, that what you immigrated from Africa, and so on. So I inject my value system, my belief in this book, but that's as far as it goes.
But I'm getting the feeling like it's so imperative that you introduced all the different facets of the human dynamic, you know, and the different roles that we play in this lifetime, and how really at the end of the day, we're all connected.
Yeah. Right.
And it really fascinates. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do take advantage of my military experience in the plot itself, involving disaster preparedness with the Italian army, and how they react to a nerve agent attack. And and then I explain a little bit technically and logistically what happens when they do a fake military funeral. So that's pretty cool.
Whoa. And there's so much that the general public doesn't know, right? This is going on, as we could say, under the radar.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating. And I really love that you brought the love concept into this, because it does relate to a way a lot of humans use love as a weapon against each other here in our reality. And then for the extraterrestrials to employ that dynamic to gauge, you know, the receptibility of the culture that they're going into. I like that connection. It's really relatable, you know. I'm just fascinated on that. So I saw the Vatican book that you held up. There was a lot of research that went into writing Salvation, and especially the Shroud of Turin. And I just had a personal question, when was the last time that you were back at the Vatican personally? Has it been years and years, or
2006?
2006.
Yeah.
In that chapter that goes through the Shroud, are we able to get a visual of the Vatican in there?
Yeah. So the murder occurs in one of the gallerias, and I explain the path that the investigator goes from seeing something on the monitor where he sees the shadow of a winged creature like a gargoyle in one of the gallerias, and that prompts him to get out of his security detail and find out what's going on, and that's what gets him killed. So there's detail about that. Robert poses as a security consultant to do an audit on the surveillance system so that he can get a clue of what happened. And I explain, as he goes through every one of the buildings, a little bit of the characteristics of those buildings, including going in that one large hallway where everyone congregates before going into the basilica, and no, the Sistine Chapel. Sorry. So yeah, there's a lot of detail there because I guess it's because I'm an architect. I like to write about, you know, buildings and places and describe them. And then there's a lot of good description in when they're in Torino about the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, which is the cathedral that is attached to the chapel of the Sindone, which is the shroud. They call it the Sindone. And as Robert is looking out of the window from his hotel and he sees the chapel in the distance, I explain architecturally this chapel. And then I bring up the idea that it's very interesting that the chapel, which was designed and built using the latest technologies and mathematics to build that thing, ironically, was built for the organization that would suppress that kind of thing.
And it's interesting when you said mathematics, my mind went back to that dream that you recently had with all the equations coming and going, I wonder if that's kind of going to connect in there somehow. I have a kind of a fun question I want to ask you. Because as writers, we have to, for me, I'm sure it's for you as well, many writers, we kind of channel into our characters to be able to imagine ourselves in that scene. If you were able to have lunch with one of your characters, who would you have lunch with? The antagonist, the protagonist? Who would you have lunch with?
No, I wouldn't be the protagonist. He would drive me crazy. No. There's a very interesting passage where he's trying to find the identity of Robert, because Robert Ladd is on the phone of Fulvio, who is the guy that gets killed. And the protagonist has his phone and he sees Robert's name in there and he wants to know why he's in there. And so there's a passage where he goes through the steps to try and find out through FBI the identity of Robert. And when he finds out he's a security consultant, then he just goes wacko, you know. But no, it would be probably Robert.
Robert, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's so fascinating because on a personal basis, you're an architect. You've got experience in the military. You have a lot of experience with things that a lot of people don't know about. And then it's interesting because you're able as an architect to design this fictional world as well as reality buildings, physical buildings. Yeah. It's just really lends to the authenticity of your novels and the believability that might help the skeptics get more engaged and overcome their logical brain, right?
Yeah. If there's one thing about my novels is they're very grounded in the way that they describe the locations and the places, because they're based on real places. So it makes the stories believable when you're presenting real places. And if you go in and Google these places, you'll be able to see that I'm describing exactly as, you know, what they are.
That's so important. So what do you hope readers are going to take away after finishing the Disclosure Paradox Salvation?
That they would be interested in reading book 1.
Start with book 1, then go to book 2 so you don't miss out on the foundation. That's amazing.
I would think that it's just an effort to get people to think. And if they don't know about the Shroud, learn about it. If they know about the Shroud, learn more about it, learn the facts. There are a lot of people that say that it's a fake, that it's a forgery, that it was done in medieval times. And that's not the case. But boy, there are many strong voices out there about that. And, you know, in the end, and also somewhere in the middle, I point out through the characters that the Vatican, the policy of the Vatican is not to say whether the shroud is authentic or not, because they're protecting it. Because if they were to make it a forgery, you know, if they were made to fake, then there would be people that would be, quite upset about it. They wouldn't engage in the, in the various traditions. They would probably lose their faith. And if they said that it was real, that would certainly be bad too, because you have two factions. You have people that would destroy it because it is against their religion and their extreme, or you would have people, which is much more believable now that we're learning about, Epstein Island and things like that, that money can do anything, and that they would actually want to take the shroud and cut it up and sell it in pieces to people who would want to have a piece of the linen that touched the body of Jesus. So they're protecting it that way.
And that's a really good thing, because those entrepreneurs, well, they only see the dollar sign. They don't have value,
No.
Which is so sad, and it's so powerful. Your novels are so powerful because they challenge the readers who are drawn to read it about their own personal ethics and codes and their opinions and belief systems. And that's what I love about novels like yours, Paul, is it makes us step outside of our box and challenge ourselves to think differently. So if extraterrestrials, and I do believe extraterrestrials exist, of course. So if extraterrestrial intelligence exists and is more spiritually advanced, what does that say about humanity's current stage of development? We kind of talked about this in the first book.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? The extraterrestrials don't care too much about us as humans, but they care about us connected to the spirits, and they care about the earth because the earth is the perfect school for our spirits. So they understand we have free will, and this is nothing more than a classroom. And to them, our span of time on earth is very small compared to their own lifespans, which is why they call it a school, because a school is temporary. And what happens in your school? You learn, and then you're done. And that's the way they see it. So they are making sure we are not destroying the earth, destroying the classroom. They are making sure that we, abide by certain rules. But other than that, we're on our own.
Right. And I remember when we were talking in our first interview about the extraterrestrials, what would happen to humanity if we had their knowledge. We're not equipped to handle that kind of knowledge at this point. We would destroy ourselves, literally.
Right.
So they, like you said, it's kind of like a little children playing with bombs, boom, and right. We're not ready for that. That
is the thought, the concept in book one, where by the way, I do reintroduce that back in book 4 too. So yeah.
So do you believe there are forces, human or otherwise, that are intentionally suppressing this kind of knowledge?
All right. So there is a reluctance for disclosure to protect ourselves, because disclosure leads to other things. And it would lead to disclosure would have to be, first of all, officially done, and it would be with contact. And then when you have contact, you develop relations. And when you have relations, there'll be trades going on. And trades would involve technology, we are not spiritually, we're not ethically, morally equipped to handle that technology. So that's why disclosure is frowned upon. And I think the extraterrestrials have told leaders of our nations, hey, if you guys reveal all these secrets, you're going to force us to act, and you're not going to like what we're going to do. So it's protecting us from being attacked. Because if we were to have that technology, we would use it eventually against them, just like what we did to the Native Americans, the Aborigines, to the people in the Amazons. It would be just either, using the idea of spreading Christianity or manifest destiny or whatever. It would be for that reason that we would be going beyond Earth to all of these other planets, and even taking their resources. And so they know that. And that's why we are under what's called a technological and social quarantine. We are destined to be on this planet, not going beyond the planet until fundamentally we change morally, ethically, and spiritually.
Yeah, we really need to raise our consciousness
Yeah.
to a level that doesn't want to take amazing treasures like the Shroud and cut them up into a billion pieces and auction them off for millions of dollars.
Right.
Right. So I am glad as we said in the first conversation, I'm glad the extraterrestrials have us, suppressed and contained, as you say, in this quarantine, because as we look at the state of things that are going on now and the technologies that's developed, even since you and I talked back last year with AI, there's just so many gray areas, and we need to be more knowledgeable about everything and open.
Yeah.
So, wow, what a conversation, Paul. If there's one thing to take away from today, it is this: great stories. They just don't entertain us. They challenge us, what we think we know about reality, belief, and possibility. A huge thank you to Paul for joining us again and taking us deeper into the disclosure paradox universe. Paul, I'm hoping that we can do this again on 3 and 4?
Well, 3's coming out at the end of this month. Okay. And it's a prequel. It's about Katrina. And that's a prequel of the first book. So it gives a backstory of Katrina and how she got her abilities. And it's called What Doesn't Kill Her. 4 will be about the Hadron Collider. And that's going to be called Forbidden. But that's not going to happen until 2027 or 28, I suppose. But anyway, can I give you my website?
Yes, actually, I have your website and all your information from our first book. So I checked it out to make sure it's still doing everything it's supposed to be doing, and it is. So I'm going to include all those good details in our description box below. Okay, is there anything you'd like to add for the takeaways for the readers, the listeners today?
No, just there's the cover to the book, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love how the Vatican and then the DNA strand going down.
Right.
Very connected.
The DNA was drawn as if it was done by Da Vinci.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I am so amazed by you, Paul, because here you've got another about this one. You've got another one coming out next month, and then you just keep going and going. Where do you find all this time?
I don't watch TV. I read, but I don't watch TV. And I'm telling you, I don't know why, but it's effortless. It just flows. I don't have a problem with writer's block. It just comes to me. And maybe it's because I've always had this in my mind and it's just coming out. But obviously it's great that it's a series because there's continuity there. I don't have to invent some things. I could build on something that happened already and use it in the 4th book, which is what I'm doing. And it's great.
And I would think that a man of your creativity, an author who has so many ideas and different aspects and ways to bring them all together, that it's very cathartic for you to be able to just channel that and write.
Well, so, I started researching all this stuff in 2009, and I was taking it all in and writing down, making notes and stuff like that. I didn't start writing until 2018, but between those years, I amassed a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, and I kept it, and I'm pretty good at remembering things, details and things like that. And I think that's what has helped me put together all of these plots.
And I think, your career is perfect for you because you're architect, building worlds, building buildings, details, putting them all
Right.
together. It's perfect. It's a great
Yeah.
combination. So what would you tell our listeners and our readers and our authors who are inspiring to create such worlds? What would be some advice to our um, inspiring authors?
All right. First thing is, keep something nearby when you have an idea, because if you think you're going to remember it, not writing down, you're going to forget it. So always have something, by your bedside, because I still get ideas in the middle of the night, and I jot them down for this fourth book. Okay. It happened to me 2 days ago, and it came out to be a really nice part and addition of the book. But the other thing is, don't worry about being critical about yourself when you're putting stuff down on paper. You can even, you could have misspelling, you could have poor grammar. Write the ideas that you have down, and then later on you can be critical of yourself and read what you have and refine it. But it's important to just get it down, because some writers, have fallen into depression because they've been so critical about their own work. And in fact, is it Virginia Woolf, committed suicide because she was so upset with her work.
Really?
Yeah, she threw herself into the river. Yeah.
Oh, that's so tragic. That's really getting more into your thoughts than you need to be, right? And
Yeah.
being too much of a perfectionist. I like that advice because for me, I still have like napkins from being in a restaurant and the idea comes and just writing it down, or little
Yeah.
scraps of paper here and there. And it's so important just to get it out, write it down, and don't worry
Yeah.
about, like you said, grammar or spelling,
Yeah.
because the concept is there.
The other thing is that to be a good writer, I'm learning, is be observant and be aware of just some common surroundings. Take note of something and write something special about it. Um, when you're an architect, you are designing for people. You're not designing buildings to stand up. You're designing for, their thoughts, their dreams, their ideals, their wishes. And when you're writing, the same thing. You have characters that they have desires, they have dreams, they have preferences, that they have certain tastes, they have backgrounds, they have genetics. You know, add that to your story and put yourself in their place. Every one of your characters, put yourself in their place in that moment. What would you be doing? What would you be thinking?
Absolutely. And in this book, you have a lot of diversity and a lot of different types of lifestyles and identities that are very relatable to culture. So you had to put yourself into each one of their shoes, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's pretty easy to do that. The more people that you meet, the more characters that you can relate to, if you want to think about it. And even the more books that you read, you could borrow from other writers about things. So that's another thing that I recommend. Read other people's work.
Oh, absolutely. And I know that in my travels, I'll meet somebody on a train or at a youth hostel or something, and they have this quirk about them and this little personality thing, and I will keep a little, memos about that, so that they can be the quirks that you incorporate into your character's personality. So yeah, great advice. Paul, thank you so much for your time. I know it's getting late there in Virginia, so I am going to get this all loaded up with all your details. And if there's anything I missed, I will make sure you hit me back. Let me
All right.
know.
So are you going to give me a link or something like that? Or
I sure am. I'm going to send it right out to you. And for our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And don't forget to pick up the book 1, The Disclosure Paradox, and then read book 2 and just get lost in that world and challenge yourself always. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.